Hello, everyone. Welcome to KFC SuperCoach TV, leading into round 23, the second last round of the season for SuperCoach AFL, which is pretty crazy. It's been an amazing year, really, a lot of ups and downs, but we're nearly at the end. And if you are at the pointy end in the rankings and in your private leagues, this is getting very, very big and exciting, hopefully, and maybe a little bit of a stressful time. Joining me today, we've got Tim and the Phantom. If anybody out there has a trade, please let us know. Put it in the comments, and we'll try and all just live through you because we haven't had any for quite a while. But we'll try and get to maybe some tactics, and captains is going to be a massive thing leading into prelim week in head-to-head finals. Tim, welcome. Are you live in finals this week? I don't know if I might have one somewhere or other, but I got knocked out of a lot last week with Libba's injury. Did not help at all. But how's your team looking?
Yeah, g'day Al, and g'day listeners as well. In the leagues that I have been monitoring closely, Al, I think the main one's the State of Origin League that we've got going with Summer Phantoms crew from South Australia, and then a bunch of guys from Western Australia as well with Mike Hussey and Will Schofield and a few others that we've been playing against this year. And I've got my arch nemesis, Dan Batten, in preliminary final in that comp this week. And I think we're projected to go within about 10 points of each other. So that's probably the main thing that I'll be focusing on this week. And no doubt Dan will try and pull a few Swifties on me to get one over me and have bragging rights going into next year as well. But you can probably see on my head, I look a bit uglier than normal today, Al, because repping the mighty Barwon Heads Footy Club beanie because they've got Drysdale in a qualifying final tomorrow. So go Seagulls. Hopefully the shout out on SuperCoach TV can give them a little leg up tomorrow down at Port Arlington. I think it's 2:00 tomorrow. So hopefully they can get the job done there and get a step closer to another premiership in Dan. Dan's now covering the Ballerina Footy League.
Yeah, absolutely. Stephen Wells might be lurking in the crowd looking for the next Tom Stewart down there. But before we go get into the next section, and we'll welcome the Phantom in a sec, I do need to mention a couple of big announcements in SuperCoach world. First of all, anyone who's in Melbourne tomorrow night, get down to the pub at Crown from about 6 p.m. We'll have a SuperCoach panel and some trivia and just some banter. Tim and myself will be there. Heath Shaw's coming down, some past winners, some podcasters from around the trap. Select Dog making a farewell on his farewell tour after so many great years of KFC SuperCoach content. So should be a great night. Just a lot of banter leading into the Collingwood-Brisbane game, which will be on the big screen with live SuperCoach points as well. So we can follow that, but that should be a lot of fun. Get down. There's details on the all our social accounts if you need to see them. But the pub at Crown from about 6 p.m. tomorrow night, free to go. And the other one, of course, is supercoachnbl.com.au is live. So get down to that site and register your interest, and the actual platform will go live in the next week or so. I think just ticking off a couple of final things there to make sure it all is up and running. And there you go. There's all the details you need to know. So that's going to be another really exciting part of the SuperCoach stable as of about next week. So get involved with that. Now, Anthony asking a question about the event tomorrow night. I don't think you have to. You can register on the Facebook event that you're coming, which would be nice to know, but no bookings actually required. So if you're around or can get into the city on a Friday after work, that'd be awesome to see people there. But we do need to mention, welcome the Phantom on board. And you mentioned State of Origin, Tim. I was looking up today the overall rankings. We've got a new number one player leading into the final two rounds. Harry has been leading for the last 3 or 4 weeks. He's had a really strong team, but I think he's got the Libba injury as well. And obviously the Nick Dacos situation everyone pretty much copped that. So he's been overtaken, and Uzun Source is now the overall leader, who is a South Australian, and the number 3 team is also from South Australia. So must be up and about over in the lair, Phantom.
Indeed, 4.5 minutes. I know I'm going pretty bad out, but 4.5 minutes is a record to get me onto the show. South Australians obviously been listening to the lair. We were talking about in the office before about the Phantoms. Yeah, Phantom is okay at giving other people advice, just not very good at the game himself. So hopefully those South Australians are lair listeners. We'll be cheering them home. Anything to get a victory over you Victorians will take over here, as Adrian also says SA represents. So thanks, Adrian, a long time listener of this show as well. So I was going to come tomorrow night. I was going to come over for the special show, but then Jordan Ngoe was out again. So my little hope that I've got in KFC SuperCoach has been diminished again. Jordan Ngoe's out. I'm out tomorrow night. So I'll be there in spirit.
Do you have any cover for Jordan off the bench? I mean, that's what a lot of it comes down to at this time of year. And I'm playing Campbell Chesser on field. Marcus Windager had to come on field when Tuke Miller was out suspended. A lot of people playing. Maybe Ryan Marrish, who's not even in the team at the moment. It's getting pretty thin for us on the bench, but any kind of bench cover at all is worth its weight in gold. Have you got anything there?
Well, Tim told me that Matt Roberts is going to score 90 last week, so I've got him. So hopefully get a 90 from Matt Roberts, him, Campbell Chesser, and Ryan Marrick. So I'll hopefully get a score from one of those guys to cover Jordan Ngoe for the weekend. Obviously, I've been using Rory Atkins and Marcus Winhager, as we've discussed on the show over the past month. Is pretty good cover. So the bench isn't looking great. Obviously, Ngoe now adds to Jordan Ridley and Nick Dacos sitting there on the bench. So it's seen better days, but hopefully we can get that 90 from another South Australian, Matty Roberts.
Yeah, well, you mentioned a name there. I've been doing some research today for some trivia questions for the event tomorrow night, and one of them is a little Easter egg here. Anyone who's watching the show might be able to snag one of the prizes we've got going, because in the top 5 cash cows this year have made the most money as of round 22, I guess, and your man, the Rat, is in the top 5.
Oh,
so
the Rat. Well, Tim's trying not to smile or cry. I'm not sure what he's doing there. But Rory Atkins, he's been something since coming back into the side. I think I traded him in the same week Tim did, and then we watched him blow up at the top end. Suns games up there, but then he was dropped, and then he's come back, and like Tim says, scoring almost like a premium, playing with more freedom under Stephen King off the back half. But we'll leave that. I think I don't want to trigger Tim too much.
I saw Stephen King's on the short list for the Tigers coaching job next year, so if he gets it, we might have to try and see if we can bring the Rat with him. Give us some run off the back line. I think we need something, so maybe he's the answer down at Punt Road. But Tim, how are we looking for going into this week? We're talking about prelims. It's pretty massive, but no trades around. I saw the top most popular trade of the week is Tom Liberatore. For people who've got him, that was just really rotten luck to get knocked out. He was getting tagged by Finn McGuinness anyway, but he managed to get up to around the 20, 25 points early in the second quarter and then got KO'd, and he won't play this week. And he's been such a great premium scorer and a pod, really, for those of us who have had him. But if you had a trade, people looking to go sideways to Clayton Oliver, I guess if you got the money, he's another super pod for potentially the last 2 rounds. Is that where you'd be looking?
No, I think he'll get Finn McGuinness this week, Al. So probably, been thinking about what way the Hawks might go in terms of tagging this week. And I don't think it'll be Petrarca, not just because I don't own him, but because Petrarca would just take Finn McGuinness to the goal square and probably kick 4 or 5 goals on him anyway. I think we all expected, didn't we, maybe a couple of months ago when Simon Goodwin flagged this forward midfield role for Christian Petrarca, that it might have a negative impact on his KFC SuperCoach scoring, but every time he goes forward, he looks like kicking goals. And I think if they can take Finn McGuinness out of the centre square and sort of negate one of Hawthorn's real weapons in there, then that'd probably be a big win for Melbourne on the weekend. So I don't think he'll go to Petrarca. There is the chance that he goes to Ed Langdon, which is a matchup we've seen before, and they try and shut down one of Melbourne's really important outside runners. But considering the form we saw from Clayton Oliver last week against the Blues, and we know that he has been susceptible to a tag before, it would not shock me at some point, even if it's not at the start of the game, if Finn McGuinness went and sat on Clayton Oliver. So I think when you're looking at your trades for these last 2 rounds, it's really just got to be matchup dependent, and you'd be wanting to avoid players that are going to come up against Finn McGuinness, and there is definitely that prospect that Clayton Oliver might this week. So if I had a trade, I haven't for about 8 weeks, but if I had one, I'd be avoiding a player like Clayton Oliver based on that potential tag, and I'd be looking for players with ideal matchups like your man Luke Jackson, for example, Al, that goes up against Port Adelaide this week, and you'd expect him to smash Sam Hayes around the ground if Hayes stays in that Port team, or to easily win the ruck contest against Jeremy Finlayson if they go with that more mobile option Port. So you've really just got to target your trades at these last 2 rounds now. Look at the matchups and try and think who's going to score the best over the last 2 weeks of the season, because it's not about how they've scored for the first 22 weeks. All you need to really do with these last couple of trades that you might have is nail it for the last couple of weeks, get a player that's going to drop a couple of 120s or a couple of 125s in your team, and that'll hopefully be enough to win you a league premiership.
Yeah, just looking at the fixture, Hawthorn plays Freo in the last round, so you'd probably steer clear of a Brayshaw type as well.
How's my voice sound now? I feel like I'm a bit sketchy because Sam Kerr scored that goal last night, and like I when like you involuntarily just make a noise, and the rest of the house had gone to bed by that point of the night as well. So I was trying to stay a bit quiet, but like I must have woken up half the neighbourhood when Sam Kerr scored that goal last night. So I feel like the voice is still a bit sketchy just from that one moment of madness.
Yeah, I was at the Amy Park live site last night, and it's fair to say it lit up for about, especially when the goal was kicked in the next 7 or 8 minutes, and then went quiet again, which is a bit disappointing. But
you weren't the one.
That was a phenomenal moment.
Fed Square with the flares. You didn't.
No, I was not. No.
You didn't jump off the boat and let off a couple of flares out there.
That was Dan Batten.
I did. I actually heard that. Yeah. Sent a photo like he was at the game to try as a bit of a smoke screen, and then went down to cause chaos at Fed Square instead.
Phantom, who do you? Any other suggestions for people who might have a trade for Libba? And looking at the other trades this week, because a lot of them are still Nick Dacos trades, which I suspect might be people who had didn't have to play in a final last week, so there's no urgency to make a trade. So they're going to do that this week, and still looking at Nick Newman, which turned out to be a really good move last week. Zach Butters, I think, can't really go wrong there. Jack Sinclair, these sort of types. Anyone that you'd be jumping on if you had the opportunity?
Well, we mentioned Nick Newman there. We did recommend him last week, and he was very good again. Shot out, huge first half as well, slowed down a little bit. But it's hard to look at anyone else. LDU, obviously quite expensive now, 617K, but no real more informed player, I guess, in the competition. The fifth best 5-round average in KFC SuperCoach, 124, playing against the Tigers at the MCG on Saturday. It's a farewell extravaganza hour, so I wouldn't have thought there'd be too much defending going on, and not like LDU needs any help. So if you need a bit of a big pod play in your prelim final, one that can go big, even if some KFC SuperCoaches out there would have saved trades with a league focus just for this moment to make a grand final, they might be playing for some serious money. So, you're going to trade on the fixture. So you might trade out a player who's been one of your best scorers just because of the fixture, and bringing in an LDU could turn the tables on the matchup. So they're the things you do have to consider. Tom Green, 557K, came back in, been very good, 129 KFC SuperCoach points. Similar again against the Bombers on the weekend. Talk about high ceilings. He's another one that could deliver the sort of knockout blow, if you like, in your head-to-head matchup. So still a lot can be done if you do have a league focus, and it will take one big move to sort of turn the tables on that and make a grand final.
Now, I don't think anyone's bringing in rookies at this time of year. I suppose if you had 2 trades, you could just throw some money away to make some cash and grab someone at the top end of the price range. But we actually have 2 debutants this week. We're sort of into the territory of players potentially getting ruined for KFC SuperCoach next year. We want them to stay in the VFL or the out of the senior team, so their price doesn't get elevated for round 1 next year. But is there anything we need to know about these guys? Tim, Lloyd Johnson at Gold Coast, not have heard of him until today, and Jacob Ryan at the Pies is going to get a crack with Jordan De Goey and co not playing.
So from what I know, Al, which is very limited, I think Lloyd Johnson probably play as an intercept defender, but his VFL possession numbers aren't huge. I think he's averaging about 14 disposals a game in the VFL. So wouldn't suspect that he's going to come in and score big. Not that you'd be playing him on field at this time of year anyway. So probably not a big deal, and not necessarily someone that we would have been sort of all that keen to keep at 123K for next year anyway, because I don't know if he's going to be like, I wish Lloyd all the best this week on debut, but don't know if he's going to be a sort of long-term KFC SuperCoach prospect for us, but Jacob Ryan was, I know, one leading into last year's draft that we were talking about Phantom as sort of one of the best KFC SuperCoach prospects for 2023, depending on where he ended up. The fact that he ended up at a premiership contender and the team that's on top of the ladder meant that we haven't seen him until this point of the season. I think if he was at a lot of other teams, he probably would have played by now, but he's got a lot of the sort of traits, doesn't he, Fant, that we're looking for in KFC SuperCoach scorers, where he takes a lot of intercept marks, known for his intercept possessions, and he's the type of guy that we would have loved to stay cheap for next year and potentially get a sustained run in that Collingwood backline, but probably unfortunately just landed at the wrong team to be a KFC SuperCoach rookie option.
Yeah, you're right. And we'll start with, I think, prior to last year's draft, came out and said he wants to be the next James Sicily, models his game on the Hawthorn skipper. So that's always a positive for KFC SuperCoach. And in the Sanford 18s last.
So he's going to give away 50s and
get suspended to score 180 when on return. Average 28 disposals, 8 intercepts, and 148 SuperCoach points in the Sanford under 18s last year. So obviously once he sort of finds his feet at the top level, if he can slot into a similar role, very attacking minded defender. So fingers crossed, maybe doesn't score too well this week and can maybe push into the Pies team next year because his KFC SuperCoach prospects are good. So it's all about watching these guys and having a look at them for next year. In the preseason coming into this year over summer, we talked a lot about Darcy Wilmot and what he did for the Lions at the back end of last year. And obviously it was a lot better for KFC SuperCoach because it was in the final, so it didn't count or affect his price. But still, knowing what he did there, seeing what he could do there, you knew he was going to be able to come in and have an impact and stay in that side. So we a close eye on Jacob Ryan this week, not for obviously right now, but for what we're going to pick our team next year.
Yeah, we're already paying $200K for Harley Reid next year and 190 for Riley Sanders, and going to be another year of the elevated rookies, but something that I'm sure we'll talk about leading into next year anyway, Fan. But I just wanted to say before we jump into captains this week, Al, that looking at my team, and we got that really sort of handy guide that's underneath your team on the KFC SuperCoach app or website, and it tells you who sort of the most traded out players are that happen to feature in your team. And the two names that I just wanted to flag are Josh Dunkley and Darcy Cameron's the fifth most traded out. About 100 people have traded him out so far this week. But I think Cameron in particular, he's got the Brisbane Lions this week. And I know that Luke Jackson wasn't playing Oscar McInerney a few weeks ago when he went big against Brisbane Lions and was about 120 at half time. But all through, well, just about most of this year, Rucks have scored well against the Brisbane Lions. So talk about targeting those matchups. I wouldn't be trading out Darcy Cameron this week based on the fact that even though he hasn't looked all that great the last couple of weeks, like if you can loophole him in the first game of the round, by all means do that, because you might be able to take a 50 or a 60 off your field if he doesn't score well. But I think D-Cam could bounce back in a big way against Brisbane this week. And Josh Dunkley's coming up against a depleted Collingwood side. No DeGoey, no Dacos. We know he's got a big ceiling. Yes, he's been pretty ordinary the last couple of weeks, been well down on what we're used to seeing from him. But unless you had the absolute luxury of going to someone that you're locking in a 120 or a 130 from, I'd be pretty hesitant to trade out Josh Dunkley this week. So I think against a Collingwood side that's already got one eye on September, Josh Dunkley could be the type of guy that could bounce back in a big way this week.
We haven't seen the burning questions for a few weeks now, Fant, but I imagine if that was still going, Josh Dunkley would be one of the top topics this week if people did have trades, because two very un-Dunkley-like scores the last couple of weeks. Last week, I think 16 disposals, a season low, and I think only 4 of them were kicks. Gave away a few frees. Have you been watching him closely? Have you got any insight into what might be going on there? And if you did have a luxury trade, as you say, you've been saving one for a prelim, what if you could swap him out and bring in a Zach Butters or someone like that who's in red-hot form? Is that something you could actually contemplate?
It's definitely something you would look at, and something that I was sort of getting at before, as you mentioned. But we look at the fixture and what we might expect this week, and I think Tim's right with the matchup for the Brisbane midfielders coming over here. A bit of a point to prove, need to win. So I wouldn't be doing it with him. CBA, the role hasn't changed. It's been a little bit down. Brisbane have been beaten up a little bit in the midfield the past couple of weeks. Look a bit slow, a bit reactive. But I think with him, I'm not sure he's the one you would trade out. Maybe you could, if you've got an extra couple of premiums on your benches, you could loophole him. If you didn't want to VC him, if you're really worried about him, loophole him on the Friday night as an emergency. And if he does struggle again, then you can play another player. But I wouldn't be trading him out. He's not one, given the fixture and given what Tim said about the Pies this week, to do it with.
Geez, that loophole game, though, Al, like it can be pretty cruel, can't it? Like our good friend Leckdog that you already mentioned, loopholes Tom Stewart and thinks he's onto a winner. Looked to be that when he only scored 68 against Collingwood last week. Then he has Bailey Dale in his team, who has one of his worst games of the year, doesn't score well. Can't loophole George Hewitt in his mids and get stuck with a 140 on his bench. So sometimes having too many premiums can be a bad thing as well. I know most of us are scrounging around to even try and field 22 at this time of year. But, you can look at your team and think you've got this luxury of having all these players to fill your depth out. But at the same time, it's never nice when you leave sort of 150 or 200 points on the bench, because that can make a huge difference at this time of year.
Yeah, and it can be all about the timing of these games and having loopholes. So we were talking earlier in the week about Charlie Constable, whether he's a chance for a late season recall. I think he had nearly 40 touches in the VFL last week, but with Lloyd making his debut for the Suns, that would seem unlikely. But that's probably not such a bad thing, because you need a zero there to be able to run those loopholes, and maybe Marich in the forward line as well. But then on the other hand, if you've got no bench cover, you want them to play. So, it can be a tricky game, but we better get into some captain talk, because it is huge, obviously, at this time of year. And it's Friday night, the footy is on, and your KFC Friday night feast is on its way. Score free delivery on your Friday night footy feast every Friday when ordering through the KFC app or kfc.com.au. And it will be game on Friday from the pub at Cram. We'll have this game live on the big screen, so it'd be pretty good to have a VC running around to track their progress. We've mentioned a couple of names already. Adrian here likes Josh Dunkley, thinks he's ready to bounce back. What about Lachie Neale? He's averaging 89 in his past 5 games, which is ranked 98th in KFC SuperCoach. He's really dropped off the tree a little bit, but a few tags in there. But you wouldn't think Collingwood would be tagging. So Marvel Stadium, is this the type of game Lachie could produce a big VC score for us, Tim?
Definitely the type of game where he could, Al. But, yeah, like you just highlighted there, and the stats back up sort of what the eye test has been telling us for the last month or so, is that, Lachie's been pretty stinky. He's been well below his best, not just in KFC SuperCoach, but, really hasn't sort of hit the type of prolific heights that we're so used to from him. So I guess the good thing amongst all that for Brisbane Lions fans is that they're still sitting sort of top 2 or top 3 in the comp, and got over Phantoms Crows last week to put themselves locked into the top 4, despite their 2 absolute roll goal gun midfielders not really playing all that well in the last couple of weeks. So I don't mind. I think if I was going to go one of Dunkley and Neale for the VC, just for a bit of a point of difference, I probably would go Neale, because I think more people are more likely to go Dunkley. But then again, maybe it'll be the other way around, just because of the way that Dunkley's played in the last couple of weeks, Al. But I know I mentioned on our podcast this week, and keen to get Phantom's thoughts, but it does look like a round where we might have the VC and the C in our ruck line, because you've got Tim English coming up against a Geelong team that sounds like it's not going to have a number 1 ruckman, because I think Reece Stanley got injured last week. So Tim English against Shannon Neale sounds pretty appealing. And then you've got Rowan Marshall. Oh, sorry. No, I'm looking. That's round 24. Sorry, I've jumped ahead by a week just there. But so we've got Tim English up against the Eagles, and that's the game where Bont does as well. And then you have Rowan Marshall up against the Cats there, as Phantom said. So you could potentially go Rowan Marshall VC into Tim English against the Eagles, and you'd expect big scores from both of those two, coming off a 143 and a 146.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I like Neale on Friday night out of he and Dunkley, but I reckon we'll look at LDU, I think, against the Tigers at the G, as mentioned before, in the first game on Saturday afternoon, and then Tim English as captain against the Eagles at Marvel on Sunday afternoon. It's impossible to go past English on the fixture, and then obviously on what he's done this year and done recently and did last week as well. So Marshall was big last week. Should go okay against the Cats, but I'm backing Tim English to outscore him, and he'll be my fullback C if LDU can't go big, which he's sweating to since returning.
I don't want to jinx your fan, but yeah, if I was trading in a midfielder this week, it'd be LDU. And the reason I was talking round 24 there, I had round 24 up on the screen, is because I was just looking at some of the matchups for SuperCoach Grand Final week, and he's got Gold Coast next week. So unless Toot goes and sits on him, I think LDU could have. Well, he's in amazing form anyway, but could be in for a big couple of weeks to end the year out.
Yep.
Yeah, although Took is playing as a tagger now, which is really annoying when he's sitting in my midfield. But
he's going to be cheap. Dimmer doesn't tag, does he? So it's going to be cheap next year at least.
Yeah, good point.
And
I was going to say, last comment, fans, a bit of sentimentality. No thought of putting the VC on Jack Zeeble at the G on Saturday. Surely he'll get 20 kickouts and the Kangas will just kick it back to him every chance they get.
Actually, yep. No, scrap that. I think we have to do that. Yeah, I freed him. How can I? How could I forget him? You've thrown me a bit. I'm a bit flustered now thinking about Jack Zeeble at the MCG on Saturday afternoon. Might shed a tear when they cheer him off after he's had 39.
You have to get out there. So
you're right. Out VC Jack Zeeble. I'm changing my idea. VC Jack Zeeble into English. Let's do it.
The other one, Al, don't rule out James Sicily as well against the D's. So his last three, 134, 116, 149. So loves playing Melbourne. And if you need a later in the round captaincy option as well, Sick Dog, we know, is one that can go quite big, playing at 320 on Sunday against the D's. So I don't mind him. He always seems to play well against Melbourne.
Yeah, and in the last game in the round, what about? I was sort of away last week, so what's Port Adelaide doing in their rucks? I thought it was Dante was the man, but then Sam Hayes came in. So what is that going to do for Luke Jackson on Sunday?
Didn't they pull a Swifty Phantom? They told us all week that Hayes wasn't playing, and then they brought Hayes in as emergency, and then they said post-match that he was always going to play. So just a bit of ducks and drakes from the power.
But no, I think whichever way they go, still in favour of Luke Jackson. Big performance, even if Port still win the rest of the battle around the ground. I think Jackson can do some serious damage against whoever it is, because it's not going to be Scott Lysette, and Dante Vicentini is injured too. So I like Luke Jackson as a big. Ideally, he's a VC, I reckon, with that high ceiling, but probably had enough runs on the board. But again, it's round 23, so maybe just throw caution to win and do it.
Hey, fan, I reckon this is our week. I reckon Matt Flynn's coming in tonight.
Ooh.
We've been waiting for it for about 2 months. And, that GWS Port Adelaide game last week was interesting. I know Briggs scored 115, but it was the first time I genuinely watched him and thought, like, this guy looks like the burden that he's carried in the last couple of months. And the first time he's been a number one ruck might just be getting to him a bit. So he was quite good again. He was expected to win that battle, and had Port not sharked most of his hit-outs, he would have scored probably 150 like I flagged last week. But I just reckon this might be the week that Matt Flynn's coming into the GWS team. But I did say that a couple of weeks ago and was completely wrong. I don't think he was even in the 27 last time I said it. So if I'm maybe for all those Kieran Briggs owners, I'll be wrong again.
Yeah, I think is Draper back for the Bombers this week?
Yes,
So if they go Draper and Brian or Phillips, maybe this is the week where they try the two rucks GWS, which would not be good for Briggsy. But he has been, you were talking about best cash cows of the year, Al. There hasn't been too many better than him. So I know a few people captained him last week expecting bigger than a 115, but he's been amazing. And I reckon, like we talked about, who we'll be talking about next pre-season, if we need to find a bit of value in the rucks, I reckon he'll be one that we talk about a fair bit. He won't be that cheap, will he? So it'll probably still be one we're talking about, depending on where Matthew Flynn and a few other, and Braden Pruce and these other guys go during the ruck merry-go-round in the off-season as well.
Nick Madden, see if he comes through. But one of the great KFC SuperCoach picks this year.
No.
All right, thanks, gents. Braden Pruce, of course. He's probably going to come in round 24, I think. And just that's something to bear in mind, that there is a round 24 this year. It's finally come around. I think it was M. Chalice was saying at the start of the year, it's a long year. There's an extra round. we all should be thinking about that when we're planning our trades, and I don't think any of us did. But now it's going to finally
She
come
was right.
and bite us. She was.
Give me some more trades, Al.
Well, I saw someone saying that they thought that might be one of the prizes that we're giving away at the event tomorrow night. I don't know if I quite have the authority to do that, but I'll see if I can pull some strings. But if anyone can get down to Crown at on Friday night, that'd be awesome to catch up. So we'll see you then. Jump on SuperCoach NBL. Good luck in all your prelims out there, and we'll catch you next week for some KFC SuperCoach Grand Final chat. Cheers.
Go Bowen Heads.